Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have another brand new Creature Preacher model to take a look at, which is super exciting because I love Creature Preacher. I think he produces some of the absolute coolest models I've ever seen. Definitely some of the highlights of my collection are from Creature Preacher. And this time, rather than a dinosaur or any kind of like a movie monster dinosaur, we actually have a kaiju. If you are familiar with what you are seeing, you may or may not be able to recognize it straight away. This is Project Nemesis, which is a book from Jeremy Robinson. And to my knowledge, this is the first time I've actually seen a model created for that kaiju. But on top of that, he's created it in kind of like a deforreal style where it has obviously very exaggerated proportions and stuff. Something we see quite often when it comes to, Godzilla models and stuff like that nowadays. And I think it looks great. Like he really did another phenomenal job on sculpting this out to kind of look how Nemesis looks in the artwork I've seen, but also just generally giving it an extremely cool visual, extremely cool sculpt, extremely cool paint job, as you always find when it comes to a Creature Preacher release. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump straight to a closer look at this awesome kaiju figure right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt, you can see some really nice looking detail, as you always find on a Creature Preacher release. We've got some ridges kind of leading down here along the course of the back of the head. You can also see the mouth is sculpted in an open position. He's looking directly at us right there. The mouth, again, is sculpted in an open position with the teeth showing. You can see each one of the teeth all sculpted individually. And of course, looking awesome. And you can see that one of Creature Preacher's trademarks straight away are present right here, as we have some metallic tones on the inside of the mouth, which is something that you always find on a Creature Preacher release, or most often, kind of like his calling card, are those metallic tones, and most times you'll usually find them on the inside of the mouth of your figures, and that's exactly what we have here with our Nemesis. You can see the tongue sculpted out in there as well, and definitely a really cool visual here of the kaiju with its mouth open like that. Definitely looks really, really neat. You can see the eyes are painted with a greenish tone, given a nice black pupil. They also sport a gloss coat to them, so they shine quite realistically, just like the inside of the mouth does. As you take kind of a wider look here at the head sculpt and everything, you can see again the very exaggerated proportions and everything, like you would see on a deforreal figure. It looks really cool. It's also got a really cool pose to it. As you can see, the head is turned. Definitely a nice turn there in the neck, and also tilted. You can see the head is tilted, so it's letting out a vocalization of some kind. As you continue to lead down, you can also see, again, when it comes to a Creature Preacher paint job, there's a lot of color added to it, and you can see that if you look, it may not pick up so well on camera, but there is just a mountain of different colors that have been added to this. Lots of really nice paintwork, lots of really nice variation of color added to this figure, and you can see some more of it that's kind of a little bit more obvious as you lead down here into the side. We start to pick up on some lighter tones showing up here and there, but there is honestly so much color that I feel like just showing you guys, it really doesn't do it justice. I feel like without taking it out into some natural light and looking at it there, you probably won't ever be able to really pick up on how nice the coloration is of this figure. But as you continue to lead down, you see the skin texture. You can also see kind of like a muscular appearance to the kaiju. You can also see here on the underside, we've got the throat sculpted out really nicely, which looks really good. As you lead down the course of the chest and everything, you continue to see that musculature, as well as, again, lots of really nice fine detail and variation of color throughout the course. Really smooth application of the paint as well. He obviously uses an airbrush to paint his models, and it looks really good here on this one. As you lead down here on the opposing side, you can again see the coloration and sculpt and everything, but you can get a better look at the neck because the neck's turned toward us over here, so you can see what the neck looks like a little bit better over here since the head's turning away from us on this side, which looks really neat. As you lead up here, you again have those spines moving along the back of the kaiju. You can also see that we have some greenish tones that have been applied to those areas as well, and that looks really good. You can see how smooth the actual application of the paint is in that area as well. As you lead down through the arms, They again look very nice, very highly detailed, very muscular overall, as the entire kaiju just generally does. You can see as you lead out into the hands, we've got some exceptionally long claws leading off of those fingers, and they look very, very nice. Again, painted with some greenish tones. I like how he's just added some just really subtle greenish tones, like he doesn't encase the entire claw in that color. Just really nice kind of quick spray over with it. It looks really neat the way he does that. But as you continue to move down, you can again pick up on more variation of color, as you can even see like some purplish tones here, it looks like, leading along the back of our Nemesis. You can continue to see those kind of ridges running down the course of the spinal column as you lead down here. You can also actually see the opposing arm, again, looking awesome, just like the initial arm did. You can see both arms are kind of held out away from the body, which looks really cool. Helps for, again, a very dynamic visual. As you lead down, you've got the legs sculpted out here, kind of almost like an armored sort of a look for it, as you see through the majority of this kaiju. You can also see a big claw leading off of the back of the leg, and then as you lead down into the foot sculpt also looks really nice. We've got some scoots down the toes, very nicely sculpted nails here, and you can see 4 toes as you lead along here the front of the foot. And again, we have more of that kind of like really light green that's been applied to the nails of the foot. And you can see again the same thing over here for the opposing leg. The legs aren't in any type of like a crazy different position. They are slightly different as far as the positioning goes, but not super different. But as you lead down the length of the tail, you again have some more of those ridges leading off the back of the tail, but they taper off as you lead out the length of the tail to that very unique looking tip of the tail that we have for our Nemesis. And again, you can see really smooth application of the paint. I'm loving the blues that I see through this. Like, man, it is such a cool paint job on this. It is honestly really neat to just look at in a nice light. I think this is actually the very first time that I've really brought it into a really nice light to kind of get a good look at it, and it's actually blowing my mind how cool the paint job is on this Nemesis. Creature Preacher absolutely knocks his models out of the park, but I feel like the paint jobs of his models are never as impressive as they are when I actually get them in a really nice light, so I could see the insane amount of very slight paint application and paint difference that he applies to his models. But you can see as you move through, again, it looks awesome everywhere you look. Definitely a really cool figure. Absolutely my first Project Nemesis model in my collection. It may be the only one that I'll ever have the pleasure of owning, because I don't really know of any others, but definitely another awesome release, yet again, from Creature Preacher. Now, as far as the size goes, being a Defa-Real style model, you can't really expect it to be too huge, but for a length from the tail to the snout, about 8 3/4 inches, approaching 9, or around 22 centimeters, maybe a little bit over. And then for a height to the top of the head, right around the 6-inch mark, or around the 15, maybe 15.5, or closing in on 15.5. No, actually, I'd say probably right around 15 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line, and you can see that the Nemesis is close to as tall as Mr. Papo T-Rex. So if you happen to have Mr. Papo T-Rex, you'll have a pretty good idea of the height and the fact that it's not an absolutely huge model, but it is really quite nicely sized overall. It's a nice convenient size. However, I have another kaiju model in my collection that Creature Preacher had created that is quite a bit larger, and that would be Baragon. And you can now see our Baragon and our Project Nemesis next to each other here, and they look super cool next to each other. Neat having a few different kaiju from Creature Preacher. I'm really loving the fact that he's releasing dinosaurs and stuff, but at the same time, you know, kaiju and stuff like that, because I am a massive fan of both, and definitely really cool to see him releasing kaiju as obscure as Project Nemesis as well. And if you happen to be a Creature Preacher fan for quite some time, then probably his most iconic, definitely one of his most popular figures ever, is the Crater Lake Monster. And here is a size comparison next to my Crater Lake Monster from Creature Preacher, again next to Project Nemesis. Now, there's not a whole lot that I have comparison-wise that's probably really going to do this figure justice, but for one final comparison, I figured I would just bring in 2 really popular figures that we've seen through the last few years, pretty much all over shelves. themselves would be a Dilophosaurus or a Mattel Velociraptor next to our Project Nemesis from Creature Preacher, just to kind of iron out one final size comparison. So this Project Nemesis, the Deferreal style Project Nemesis from Creature Preacher, is yet again another fantastic release and something that I am really excited to have in my collection. Now, I will be the first to admit that I actually have not read those books because I just never have time to sit down and read books. Like, I've been trying to go back and reread The Lost World Jurassic Park for probably about a year and a half now, and I got like halfway through just because I love that book and I have not had time to actually finish it. So chances of me having a chance to really read that are pretty slim, but eventually at some point in the future I would love to have the opportunity to do just that and actually become more familiar with Project Nemesis. But this model of the kaiju, I have seen, images and everything of it. I think Creature Preacher knocked it out of the park as far as this release goes when it comes to taking the overall visual of this kaiju and creating it in that perfect Deferreal style. He really did do a fantastic job of achieving that goal. The sculpt is really nicely done, pretty much screams Creature Preacher if you ask me, because he has a very specific style to his models, which I'm definitely a big fan of, and you can see that through the course of the model. Again, it looks really good as far as the overall detailing, the overall general appearance, as well as the fine detail. On top of that, he's got a really cool kind of a dramatic pose for this. You often see a lot of Creature Preacher models in almost neutral sort of positions, but this time we have a lot of life to the model. There's obviously a pretty good vocalization being let out currently, and you can see a nice tilt in the head, a turn in the head and everything, and the arms are held out away from the body. It looks super, super cool as far as the pose goes, and on top of that, his paintwork is out of this world. Again, there's just so much variation of color on this, so many different varying tones of color, and probably some of the nicest coloration I've ever seen on a kaiju figure. And again, like I said, if you do purchase one of these, just take it outside in a nice natural light and get a good look at the coloration added to it. You're really going to be blown away. So as always, if you are interested in purchasing one of these for yourself, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that right now on the Creature Preacher Etsy shop. So make sure you head on over there and grab yourself one of these, because once they sell out, he doesn't have intentions of making any for a little while, so it might be some time before you can actually acquire one of these in the future. So make sure you check the link, go grab one of these right now, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.